Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. Welcome to the regular meeting of council for Monday, February 27th, 2017. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to also recognize that we are on the traditional territories of the Hupetchesed and the Sichat First Nation. Councillors, any late items? City Clerk, any late items? Then a motion to approve the agenda circulated would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. My introductory remarks here. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to take a moment to inform the public of some important upcoming meetings. Council is continuing its deliberations on the draft 2017 to 2021 financial plan with special meetings on Wednesday, March the 1st at 6 p.m. and then again the following Wednesday, March the 8th at 6 p.m. These meetings are being held in council chambers and the public is invited to attend or watch online through the city's live streaming service. I would also like to thank the public for their participation in the recent e-town hall budget meeting that was held on February the 15th. We had a very strong online participation and council greatly appreciates hearing the opinions, ideas, and questions that were brought forward. If you missed the meeting, you can watch the archived video available on our website or through our YouTube channel. Finally, I'd also like to invite the public to attend an upcoming open house that we're hosting regarding the city's liquid waste management plan. As the city's wastewater treatment lagoon no longer meets applicable federal and provincial regulations, we are working on major upgrades to bring the city into compliance. An open house is being held regarding this important project on March 15th from 11:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Fur Room at Echo Center. For more information, please visit our website or Facebook page. Thank you.
Pretty quiet. Crickets.
Was that me?
Your time was up.
My time is up. Okay. Council, we have minutes of special meetings held at 6 p.m. and regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on February 14th. A motion to adopt those minutes would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. This now brings us to our public input period. It's an opportunity for public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each can be accommodated. Anybody wish to address council? All right. Well, then we're moving on. First one is delegations. First item under delegations is a Government Finance Officers Association Award. It's a presentation of financial reporting. Unfortunately, our Director of Finance, Kathy Rothwell, is unable to attend tonight's meeting, but I am very pleased to once again announce that the City of Port Alberni has received the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for its annual financial report for the year ended December 31st, 2015. A Canadian Award for Financial Reporting is presented by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada to municipalities whose annual financial reports achieve the highest program standards for Canadian government accounting and financial reporting. The city has received this award every single year for the past 23 years, which is a remarkable achievement. I would like to thank Kathy and the entire finance department team for their continued commitment to achieving the highest possible standards. Thank you. Our next item is Russell Dyson, Chief Administrative Officer, Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. Mr. Dyson, welcome. I was looking around the room. I didn't see you hiding back there, and I
In the
thought,
background. Thank you very much, Mayor, Council, staff, those in attendance, and those online. I'm here as the Chief Administrative Officer of the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District to do the annual budget presentation to tell you about the services of the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District and what is in the works in terms of the draft financial plan. As with the City of Port Alberni, we're in the process right now of considering that. A bylaw is at first reading. I've got a copy of my presentation for the members of Council, Mayor, and the City Clerk and City Manager.
and Mr. Dyson, I don't need to remind you that each of our presentations is 10 minutes long.
Okay.
If I remember, you are right on to the second.
Thank you. And we're starting that now? Okay. Let me just make sure I know, yes, I can control it. So, the budget is a 5-year financial plan, and first a little bit about the regional district. We were established over 50 years ago to provide services for the rural areas. We have 6 electoral areas: Long Beach, Bamfield, Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, Beaufort, Cherry Creek, and we also have 3 municipalities: Ucluelet, Tofino, and the City of Port Alberni. And since 2011, we've been growing like no other regional district. We now have 4 First Nations: Yathlulithat, Uchucklesut, Toquat, and Huayet are full members of our board. So regional districts, what are their purposes? Really, there's 4 purposes to regional districts. They were established to provide services to the rural undeveloped areas, things like street lighting, sewer, water. So we provide services to our rural areas. An example is the Beaver Creek water system or the Sprout Lake Fire Department. We then provide services to all of our members, shared services, and regional districts were a mechanism where municipalities in rural areas could share in services that they couldn't or shouldn't be doing on their own. For instance, an airport, a landfill. You don't want each rural area or municipality to do it alone. Regional districts are the venue or the means to provide those shared services across the region. We then partner with other regional districts and share services across our boundaries. North Island 911 is an example where we share that service with the Northern Island, the regional districts of the Northern Island. And then finally, the 4th purpose of regional districts, and is an unofficial one, but a very important one. When you have the politicians of the region in the room together, they're able to develop strategies and partnerships for lobbying senior government for influencing the interests of our region. And our board does a lot of that when it comes to forest issues, fishing, environment, or otherwise. And that's a very important role that regional districts can fulfill as well. Last year, I was a bit more of a splash. I brought balloons to illustrate this. We're cutting the budget on that balloons this year. But the balloons illustrate this, and that is we have 48 services, but there's only 12 services that the city participates in. And that means you're only paying for 12 of the services. And those services include general government, which is the conduct of general government, the North Island 911, Alberni Valley Emergency Program, Solid Waste Management, our landfills and recycling programs, the Alberni Valley Airport, Regional Water, Regional Planning, Regional Parks, Custom Transit, the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol, Grants and Aid, and finally the multiplex debt. All the Alberni Valley is sharing in paying off the multiplex debt. And then there's those other services that you have nothing to do with when it comes to funding, like the Long Beach Airport, waste management on the West Coast. In order to manage these services, and with everybody participating at different levels, there's very specific rules for our financing, and that is areas are only charged for the services they benefit from. Also, services are completely independent. Our financial team must have separate, distinct budgets for every service, and we can't transfer revenues from one service to the next. We can't raise water toll revenue in Beaver Creek to pay for the landfill. We can't increase our landfill tipping fees to pay for airport improvements. Each service has to be funded separately and distinctly. But ultimately, the entire board is responsible for those services and are the policy makers and decision makers. So with the regional district, as I mentioned, you only pay for the services you participate in. Our costs, for the most part, are recovered by taxes and tolls. Like the city, there is some opportunity for grants, and we benefit from those, but for the most part, we've got to come up with our revenue from parcel taxes, property taxes, or tolls. And in order to manage this complex system of different services, staff time is allocated across the area based on what they use. And finally, we always pursue alternatives to service delivery. And what do I mean by that? Well, we rely on employees, but not solely. We also rely on contractors. The Alberni Valley and West Coast landfill are operated by very competent contractors, Barrie and Vale. We also rely on volunteers to provide our services, such as the fire departments, the 3 fire departments, Bamfield, Beaver Creek, and Sprout Lake. And whenever we go into providing a service, we always look at what's most efficient and most practical and what is accountable in terms of how we deliver it. We share resources. We share the resources of the economic development manager for the city by providing some funding towards that. Building inspection is something that we cover for each other when there's absences. And we've had a more robust partnership with Tofino and Ucluelet, where our building inspectors have been the full-time building inspectors for their municipalities as well. We have 22 full-time staff, a variety of casuals and part-times as well, and those are spread across the Alberni Valley and West Coast. We have 12 committees that are volunteers that are helping us to set policy and in some cases helping to actually get things done. And as I mentioned, 48 services sharing resources and balancing those demands. There's a lot of other stuff we do, as I mentioned, when it comes to lobbying, whether it's a helipad for the Bamfield Medical Center, whether it's highway connector improvements. But ultimately, people are our greatest resource. Whether they're contracts, employees, or volunteers, we can't do services without our people. And we're very fortunate to have some good ones. So every service is charged an administration charge. That's to pay for grants, governance, financial accountability, and such. So they all contribute to that. General government on your left-hand side is it's a separate service. It's the function of government that does all of that. And as I mentioned, our salaries and benefits, the staff time are allocated across the services. That's very important for the City of Port Alberni, and I'll illustrate that later. So just a few numbers. Last year, the city contributed $1.2 million to the tax requisition of the regional district. But you only contributed $200,000, or only 9.5% of the wages at the regional district. And remember that figure, 9.5%, because I'll talk about the allocation of your costs later, and you'll see that's much more reduced from that. Then you contributed to North Island 911 to make that system work. Everyone, all the participating members are contributing, so that was $112,000. $92,000 was for custom transit. So those are services that we don't have direct control over. We're working in partnership for. The Sprout Lake Marine Patrol, very successful program to date. It has been funded by zero tax requisition for the last 2 years, entirely because of grants. Unfortunately, we didn't get the grant this year, so we will have to tax in order to provide the service. Financial plans, as with the city, we have to adopt them for 5 years. Ours has to be adopted by March 31st. Basically, the overall budget, we're looking at about $18 million this year. And then the Alberni-Clockhart Regional Hospital District, I'll explain a little bit more, but same program, same deal. We have to have that budget adopted, and we're looking at about $1.7 million. So some of the highlights, what did we do with all of this? Last year, there was the Alberni Valley Regional Airport expansion, a major construction project that proceeded and is still ongoing. A lot of the planning and preparation for the Island Ag Show happened last year. These are services that you participated in, a very successful event that was just held here. Toquat Nation joined as the final of the 4 First Nations to be part of our board. We looked at improvements to the 3rd Avenue recycling depot, and thanks to the City Works, they're helping get the water connection. That will be a fully sprinkled system there. We're very proud of the recycling depot and the improvements there. I think it's probably one of the best in BC. And finally, exercise coastal response. And that again epitomizes how we deliver services at the regional district, a partnership by volunteers and staff. It in particular demonstrated how the city and regional district employees work so well together, where for 4 days we were working side by side. The evaluators could not believe that these were people from different organizations. We work so seamlessly. So my appreciation for the employees of the city that participated and worked with us in that event. And we also had members from Parksville, Nanaimo, Courtenay, and other municipalities too, and a ton of volunteers, 300 volunteers that acted as victims in some cases, but actually are part of the emergency program. Very successful event and lots of good recommendations to move that program further. What's coming up for 2017? The Alberni Valley Regional Airport expansion and lighting. We received a grant from the BC Air Access Program to help with the costs of lighting, and that project should be wrapped up this year. We're looking at expanding the landfill. Implementation of solid waste material bans. I know the city is very interested in organics, and that will be a priority. We're looking at those programs this year. And then finally, emergency program improvements, including a new policy group, which the City Council will be participating on. And then other projects that you're not funding, but are very important to us. A major water treatment plant coming to Bamfield, and finalizing our zoning bylaw. Where does the money go? Sorry, the graphic is a little small, but basically this shows you that the most of our money is spent on landfills. Very expensive to operate landfills, highly regulated. Our water systems, a lot of the costs to our water systems right now are capital costs to improve them to meet the requirements, and our airports. We have 2 airports, the Alberni Valley and the West Coast. Also costly operations, but providing exceptional services. Our sources of revenue, I explained this before, the majority is from sales of service or tolls and taxation. Each year, if there's a surplus in one of our services, that rolls over and is there to spend for that same service. It can't be rolled over into another service or used for other purposes. So in some cases, we rely on surplus. It's a very important budgeting mechanism because we don't get our tax revenues until halfway through the year. So in some cases, we have to rely on those funds to make our commitments. And then other revenues and grants are a small part. So apportionment. What this is that we have all of these partners. If we have a service that's providing to them all, what is your contribution? And what it says here is that your piece of the pie for regional services is 38%. And that's because of the value of your land and improvements relative to the other partners. If we look at a service that's provided to just the Alberni Valley, your share is a little higher because there's fewer partners, but you're paying about 57%. And then you would be sharing that service with Sprout Lake that has a relatively high assessment, 22%, Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, and the others. So bear in mind that for those services, that's your percentage of the cost, but also bear in mind my 9.5%, your only cost to our actual wages at the regional district. So what are we looking at for the 12 services that you participate in for next year? And the bottom line, I think, is a piece of good news. This just demonstrates on the right-hand side whether you will be realizing an increase or decrease. If it shows red, it's a decrease in the cost of the service. If it shows a black, it's either neutral or an increase. One of the general government, your costs are going down by 35%, or pardon me, $35,000. The reason mainly is increases in the land and assessments of properties in Tofino and the other areas. So we're still doing or charging have the same expense, but your costs are going down because relatively speaking, your value of land has gone down. Alberni Valley Emergency Planning, we're looking at a robust improvement plan to realize the changes, but even so, we'll still be able to reduce the budget on that for you. Some of the increases, the Alberni Valley Regional Airport, just realizing the borrowing we're doing in order to provide that project. Alberni Valley Regional Water, this is just looking at the potential of a service. It was not a priority of the board to action this right now. We'll be doing some modest communication with Catalyst and the potential partners only this year, so that budget has gone down. Grants and aid, basically there wasn't as many asks that the board put a priority, or your members put a priority in participating in, so the overall is a decrease on grants and aid. I mentioned the Sprout Lake Marine Patrol. Previously it was zero. We're having to tax to provide the service, so that is an increase to you of $18,000. But the bottom line is the services that you participate in, you'll be paying $51,000 less. Our tax rates, there's a tax rates for each service. Unlike the city, the tax rates are established for the various types of property by the province, not by us. Your property may fall within multiple service areas, therefore you must consider what services you're providing in order to figure out what your net increase is from year to year. And I'll show you that in a moment. Tax requisition generally for the city has been increasing over time as we provide more service, as our demands for the landfill become greater, as, well no, not the landfill because it's paid for by tolls, but the Alberni Valley Airport expansion program and such. These are all costing us a little bit more, so overall the costs have been increasing, except for this year, a modest decrease, as I mentioned, for over last year. Tipping fees, I mentioned this. The Alberni Valley landfill, I am very proud of our landfill. A very good, well-run operation that meets the regulatory requirements. that is fully funded for the Alberni Valley by tolls, not taxes, and is presently the cheapest in tipping fees on Vancouver Island. No other landfill on Vancouver Island is funded by tolls. They are all supported by taxation in order to meet their capital requirements. Very proud of our landfill, very proud of Al McGill, who's recently retired, an engineer that has helped us get it to where it is. Very proud of Barry and Vale, excellent contractors that are very conscious about good landfill management. So very proud of our landfill. But our costs are going to have to increase. We're going to have to increase to provide more programs in order to eliminate some of the wastes. But the whole purpose of eliminating wastes like drywall, like organics, is to avoid having to collect gas from the landfill. We are not required to collect methane gas now. If we were, it would be a $13 million cost with very little energy collected. So we want to reduce our waste that's going into the landfill. Very important that we reduce the waste, because once you get to a certain level, and we're close, we might have to implement $13 million of capital improvements. We want to avoid that. And once again, our fees will still be the lowest on the island. Regional Hospital District, a separate function. Basically, the hospital district, we collect 40% of the capital cost to operate West Coast General Hospital, the Tofino Hospital, and the Banfield Health Center. The budget is adopted accordingly in consultation with Island Health and their priorities. The requisition overall has been going down as we pay off our principal debt for the West Coast General Hospital. And bottom line, wanted to get to this. So what does all of this mean for the City of Port Alberni taxpayer at this time? And this is a draft because our budget is not yet adopted. But on a $200,000 assessed property, home, residential, we're looking at a decrease. That home would have paid approximately $96 last year. This year they're going to pay $86. We're still providing the same level of service, still doing these advancements at the Alberni Valley Airport, and for the city residents, they're going to see a decrease. What are our next steps? Like the city, the regional district goes through a public process. They've given first reading to the budget bylaw. There were some amendments to that. There may still be additional amendments. They are still possible. We are having second reading of the bylaw on March the 15th at 6 p.m. at the regional district, and that is a public meeting. We'll give a presentation to those members of the public that are there about it. There will be the opportunity for input. If you don't think this meets your needs, come and tell the board so. And following that, the intent is to provide third reading and adoption by March the 22nd at the regular meeting at 1:30. And with that, I come to the conclusion of my presentation, and I'm open for any of your questions.
Thanks, Russell. You almost made it. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good presentation, Mr. Dyson. And before I ask my question, I'm just going to say congratulations on your new job, and I hope you do very well. But we'll miss you dearly here in the Alberni Valley. Your landfill tipping fees, are they so inexpensive that we might be importing?
Always a
Waste
question
from-
that's asked,
Yeah.
and a very good question. So what we do is we task our operator to monitor that, to ensure that there's not waste coming over. And what there is that there's probably a little bit that does come over, and it comes over in two forms. There may be a truck, or that it's a contractor that does work over here, and he'll come with a load and mix it in and dump it. And there are those people that might be maybe a Port Alberni resident owns a place in Coombs and they're doing a renovation, and they'll bring their material to us. So there is definitely some indiscriminate waste that comes in like that, but not enough to be an issue or a concern. We do not accept full-scale importation of waste. It is an issue for the Sashat First Nation and the Hoopachesset First Nation. It's their traditional territory that the landfill operates on. We're very mindful of that. And so I can say that some probably does, but not a full scale or not a concerted amount.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McClellan and then Councillor Paulson.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Russ. So just one request, I guess. Is it possible to have your staff send us the copy of the engineer's report on the landfill to the councils here? I don't think we've got it. I was going to try and do it, but my my technology ability did not let me get it out of what we had it and send it around.
Sure, and you're referring to the annual report for the landfill, or to the
The bit about the
gas,
methane and
the
all
methane,
that stuff.
the gas. Yes, we'll do two things. We'll make sure it's on our website, and we'll also send it to City Hall so that it can be shared with council. It's a very good report because it shows the potential for costs.
Councillor Paulson, then Councillor Alberni.
Just a quick question, the multiplex debt, is this the last year or is this the second to last year?
No, it's either 2020 or 2021 that the debt is
Okay.
paid off.
So we're a couple or 3 years away.
Yep. So that's the Alberni Valley, except for Beaufort, are contributing to the payment of the capital cost of the multiplex, and that will be either 2020 or 2021. It will be paid off.
Doesn't seem like almost 20 years ago.
Councillor Alberni.
Mine was on multiplex debt, so.
All right. Anything else, Council?
One other tidbit of information on debt. The West Coast General Hospital debt is probably going to be paid off in 2021, 2022, thereabouts too. So there's two items that are costs to your taxpayers where debt is being paid that may be off the books.
What's that costing us?
Can I just go back? So we pay approximately 1.7 million. I bet that it's probably about we're servicing 1.3 million. So, and it's 30 cents per thousand is what your residents are paying. 30 cents per thousand is what they pay towards the debt of the hospital.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alberni.
I'm just wondering about the debt, since we're talking about debt, about the regional airport. And what do you know what cost per thousand we're paying for that? And
I
it's
don't.
what, 20, 25 years?
There's a maximum of $6 million is the total debt we can assume for the airport, and the project is on budget and within that realm. I will get figures to Davina that she can share you that will look at what's projected as we come, because we haven't paid for the whole project as of yet, but what we anticipate that to be.
So we should know that sort of by the end of this, probably next fiscal year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Councillor Sauvé.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking of the regional airport, where is it at now? I know we went into figures almost 2 years ago, so I'm just wondering where the project is at now.
Sure. So all the work to prep the runway, the extension and the widening has been done. We did a full layer, the lower layer of asphalt on all of that, as well as the taxiways. What we did not complete last year was the final lift of pavement. So what we're waiting for is about a 7 to 8 day window of good weather in which that can be pulled off and the runway will be complete. And then there's some a little bit of groundwork to be finished off on that. We have to do 2 roadworks off-site on Crown lands. The Northwest Industrial Road, which provides access to the Dolan's Pit, we're having to relocate that. That will be going to tender here, and the work will be done in the spring. And then on the southeast, the Airport Nament Forest Service Road has to be lowered, and that will also be going to tender to do that work probably the same time as the Northwest Road. So we hope that that will be complete in the spring. And then the lighting project is proceeding right now. They're putting in all the chases and whatnot for that work. That will probably be completed in early fall of this year.
And part of that loan, my second question, the final one, has nothing to do with the infrastructure for the airport itself, as in tower or anything like that?
So the cost for the airport is about $5.9 million, and with that you'll be paying for all the groundwork to prep the land, both on the site and off the site, to meet our obstacle limitations, the creation of the runway itself, a medium intensity lighting system, and then improvements to the taxiway to provide for additional hangar space and rentals. And that's your primary cost for the airport, and what you will realize is an extended runway with a medium intensity lighting system. The runway at the Alberni Valley Airport will be fully compatible with the Long Beach Airport runways. They will be basically the same operating distance and width with the same lighting system for both.
Okay. Mr. Dyson, thank you so much for your presentation and Council definitely wishes you well in your new position. Comox Valley is very in a great position to have you as its CEO. I believe you're starting in May, am I correct?
Starting May 15th, and thank you very much for that. And I just want to thank the City of Port Alberni, in particular Eric McCormick, who had the confidence that I could provide a service to the city, and I really appreciate having worked here for 9 years at the city and the regional district for the last 6. It's a fantastic community. We are maintaining our roots here. Sorry if I can just say this because a lot of people have asked. We will still maintain our roots here in the Alberni Valley, so that won't change.
So this means that the Bulldogs won't be out of step. You'll still be able to provide them with all sorts of support and
Absolutely, yep.
and all of those.
Yes, and
Yes.
the water buffalo will not be making their way up the Ash Valley. They will be staying put.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you very much. Okay, Council. Our next delegation is the AV Chamber of Commerce. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks very much. I'm hoping I get the same 10 minutes that Mr. Dyson got. And by the way, the Chamber of Commerce is also sorry to see Russell leave. He's done a great job here. So I'm going to just take a few minutes and go over our fee-for-service agreement. I'll draw your attention to a little package I left with you. Within that is some of our feature things that we do, our adventure map, our food guide, a tear-off map. These are all new initiatives in the last couple of years. All of them have done very well. And there's also a letter in there that we sent to business owners in November of 2016. And if you go through it, it just kind of highlights some of the many things that Chamber of Commerce does. Not all of them visitor services related, but we're kind of in a blurred scenario there with the Visitor Center Agreement and the Chamber of Commerce. So our fee-for-service agreement, let me just see if I can work this guy here. I had this, or? Oh, there it is, okay. Sorry. So we saw about 54,000 visitors in 2016 compared to 49,000 in 2015. So a slight increase. Mostly, our gains were mostly through our external operations. And I've kind of highlighted the months that we saw increases. I don't know whether that's a trend that will always be the case, but for 2016, basically half the year, those particular months we saw increases in each one, and obviously the other ones we didn't. And most of our gains, again, were through our roaming and external activities. Interesting stat is 1.2 visitor connections every minute in the month of July. So we're busy in the summer months. It's just nonstop. Our revenues for 2016, of course, we got 84,000 from the city, 23,000 from Destination BC, hiring grants at just over 20,000, and tourism to Fino, ACRD. Off to the right there, we had revenue from the food guide. We had a grant from Destination BC to build a website or improve our website, which I hope that you're familiar with. I'll show it to you later here, or where it is. And that's for visitor services. And then we had brought in a circus as well in 2016 that was good for the community. So total revenue of just under 159,000 for 2016. Our operating costs, we were a little higher in student wages than we had budgeted for, but again, with 1.2 visitors every minute, one can see why. Our full-time staff and other support workers, the food guide, the maps, all these various projects that, again, you've got copies of, they obviously cost money to produce every year. Our ambassadors, very underfunded program. We didn't spend a whole lot on it last year, but we should be constantly spending more than that. Upkeeping the grounds, travel and training, $4,000. The website, as I mentioned earlier, in the revenue side, we spent basically what we received in it. Administration and the building expenses for total expenses of $167, meaning we had a bit of a shortfall that the chamber made up for with $8,600. Projected 2017, so we're asking for 1% extra this year. We've never asked for that before. But, you know, everybody knows that things increase, so we're asking for a little bit of a boost there. Same thing from Destination BC. That's a fixed amount from them. We've applied for another grant with Destination BC, and I'll refer to that in a couple of minutes here. ACRD, student grants again, $20,000. Tourism Tofino, that's an ongoing relationship we have with them. Miscellaneous revenues for a total projected of just over 161,000. Costs, 80,000 with wages, 20 with students, 30,000 administrative. Projects, again, stuff that you've got in your booklets, etc. $2,000 with ambassadors, and again, I refer to that as being significantly underfunded. Our mobile visitor center, I'll refer to that in a few slides from now, and the grounds and other costs there for a total cost of $161,000. Our ambassadors, we have about 50 people. 4 per day go out to Cathedral Grove. 2 per day on the Francis Barclay. They work in the Mobile Visitor Center, in the Visitor Center itself. They go to tournaments, special events, and of course they'll be helping us in some of our own events like the Triconic Challenge. Speaking of the Triconic Challenge, this is an event that we do. It's under the Chamber of Commerce, but of course it's visitor services. We're bringing people into town, so I'll refer to it just briefly here. Canada 150 event, many local partners. Looking for upwards of 1,000 people to participate, or either directly or indirectly with family, family accompanying the participants. $200,000 budget, actually more than that. And then we're also doing the paper chase run in a month from now. Our mobile visitor center, that van is currently off the road. It's hidden from view for probably good reason. But it's actually served us very well. In 2016, through that van in our external operations, we saw as many as 30,000 people. So it's a very, very worthwhile program. Partnerships, Tourism Tofino. Again, we connected with Tourism Tofino about 3 years ago, and it's really helped us help them, and help them help us. So it's a very good relationship to have. Through that relationship, we started doing FAM tours out in Tofino 3 years ago, and then we expanded into Ucluelet. And then last year, we got them coming our direction. And this is a picture of about half the group on the drinkwater tub out at Sprout Lake Landing. Yeah, thanks, Jan. And that day, over 2 days, we visited all the places there, as well as Swept Away Inn. I think I forgot to put them on there. But again, Coleman Meadows Farm was one of the places we visited, and Lady Rose Marine, of course, Cedarwood Lodge, the aquarium, Starboard Grill, etc. So it was very nice to get those people here, including leaders from Qualicum Beach even joined us. And it all started from that relationship that we started with Tourism Tofino. We did the food guide last year. We have about 50 local businesses included in this guide, which really is quite exceptional. There's only about 60 eateries in Port Alberni. So we got the vast majority, about 85% of the businesses involved in this product. And again, you've got a copy in your booklets there, or your packages. We give those out to virtually every visitor that comes into the visitor center, or through our mobile visitor center. So we know that it's serving the visitor, but it's also serving our community in terms of driving revenues to our restaurants. As you know, we've got the Alberni Valley Tourism Training Program underway, and that started off very well. It's a 20-month program where we're training upwards of 300 people. We've got the Bluefish Gallery in our visitor center, and that allows us to receive constant positive feedback from visitors as they walk in our building. It's not unlikely to hear people say that we have the very nicest visitor center of any that they ever visit. So it really improves the first impression. Ongoing, our wayfinding signage, our adventure map, the tear-off map, food guide, visitor center, etc. And again, these are some of our achievements over the last couple of years. Try home first, many things that we're doing. Last year we did the number 7 challenge that morphed into the Triconic challenge for this year. We're now doing a member spotlight where we're featuring a member every day on our Facebook page. Very good traction through that. We're on our 3rd edition of the Adventure Center map. Our mobile website, there is a link to it there, but I encourage you to take a look at that site if you're not familiar with it. It is really good. And we also feature all the Port Alberni events on there with lots of good pictures. And it's a strong site, and it's ever evolving. And again, that was funded by Destination BC through a grant we applied for. We continue to market out of town through for our Triconic, for the number 7 challenge last year, and other things. And we encourage the city to continue with that program that they started, or that you started in 2016 through Economic Development Office. We'd like to draw your attention to our desire to see an event planner or some sort of department or concept initiated by the city, perhaps through an organization like ours. We know that events bring money, they bring people, they bring activity, it improves community pride, and we think that a quarterback for that kind of program would be very, very beneficial for all of the events and for the community at large. This is a picture of what we applied for through the Destination BC grant that we applied for. So this could be the evolution of our mobile visitor center. We've applied for funding to get a tent, visitor center operations tent. The flags would be branded with our various events, so it could be Salmon Festival, it could be the Toy Run, could be the Triconic, could be whatever type of event. We would feature those events, and we can bring that tent anywhere. The trailer there would be attached to the company car that the Chamber of Commerce now leases. So that would be our evolution in terms of our mobile visitor center operations. So the trailer would be branded. There'd be all of our guides, et cetera, would be inside the trailer, and we'd be able to bring it to various sites and that sort of thing. So that's where we're hoping to head with the plans and the hopes that Destination BC will give us that grant. So with that, I thank you. And I'd like to invite Jan up here to speak on a different topic, but my 10 minutes is nowhere near done according to what I saw with.
Give you another 10 minutes.
No, I know. Jan won't take long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. One of the things that the Chamber, the Chamber itself doesn't get very many opportunities to come and speak to. We usually are all about the visitor center and the fee-for-service. But this is something that we've been passionate about for a little while, and this really goes back to a lot of the planning and stuff that Council has taken on the North Waterfront study, all the different studies that have been taken. And one of the big challenges when we did the charrette for the Lower Johnson is where does the money come from? Where do we get the money to do these wonderful projects? So we can spend a lot of time and energy figuring all these great ideas, but we need the source of revenue to do that. And it's hard for council to sometimes put money aside to do some of these projects. So what the Chamber of Commerce would like to propose is that the business license fee be put into a separate account. That license fee in the upwards of $200,000+ a year would be leveraged. So if we collected it for 2 or 3 years, and you get, $600,000-$700,000. Now we've got the opportunity to make that 50-cent dollars or 33-cent dollars towards a project that we, as a community and the stakeholders, would be vested in to do something like the Lower Johnson upgrades, and those types of things. So it's something that we know cannot happen this year. We understand that. But it is something that we thought we'd bring forward because this is something that we truly believe that in 2018 should be budgeted as a line in the budget. Do you have any questions?
Councillor Sobe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 questions. As for the 1% increase proposal from the Chamber of Commerce, is that going to be also addressing the other communities as Ucluelet to Fino, or is it just Port Alberni?
I'm not quite sure the question, Councillor Sobe.
So you're asking for possibly a 1% increase
Right.
into your budget? Are you asking the same thing from the other districts? Tofino?
No,
Ucluelet?
the fee-for-service arrangement we have is with the city of Port Alberni to run the visitor center here.
Okay.
So all we're doing is taking a look at the fact that we've had $84,000 a year for the past several years without any sort of increase. So we're just looking at the fact that our costs are going up. As you saw, the chamber props up the visitor center operations every year.
But are you not receiving funds also from Tofino
No.
or Ucluelet?
No,
Nothing at
we
all?
rent out space in our visitor center for a stand there to Tourism Tofino. And so
Okay.
we do that, and then we try and prop that up with extra or additional members through their membership.
And we don't charge nothing to Tofino for doing that, or?
We charge them money, $5,600 a year. Yeah.
And for that tax that you're talking about, you know, the last thing I would like to consider is going to businesses and ask for more taxes and all that. And I understand the plan, and it's, you know, it's to deal with the charrette issue with Johnson and so forth. But that specific tax, do you know what kind of amount you're talking about, or?
So the beauty of this is we're not asking the businesses for tax. The city of Port Alberni currently collects this tax, has been collecting this tax for years. Unfortunately, those funds go into general revenue. They do not go into anything specific. So what we're asking for is those funds be targeted for business improvements, because in our view, it's a business tax. So there's no residential tax, anything. So we as business people pay our property tax, plus we pay for a license. Now what we're asking for is that license to be earmarked for projects that would help the business community, like Lower Johnson.
Thank you.
Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, on the business license fees, I know this is something that we've discussed and I've brought forward to council just in my council reports a few times, because we have discussed it at length on the Civic Affairs Committee and at the Chamber Board. I think personally that it is a great concept for us to look at and talk more about as a council. It's money coming from business. It would be nice to see it invested specifically in business areas. A couple things that I've heard that I really like the concept of is being able to direct that maybe with a committee made up of businesses as well. But in general, I just think that it's additional money coming from businesses. It would be nice for us to have some funds specifically marked for business improvements. I think that this is a great discussion for us to possibly take to a committee of the whole meeting, because I know that there are some other ideas on where those funds could go as well. I think that generally it going into general revenue is not ideal. But I think that there are other councillors with ideas on where it could go. So I would like to see us take this to a committee of the whole meeting. And then on the 1% increase, I'm happy to see the chamber or the visitor center asking for that, because I think that whenever we give zero increases, it always comes back down the road with us needing to catch people up. Obviously, your fees are going to increase and your costs are going to increase. We're not doing ourselves any favors by keeping you at zero. Most of our other fee-for-service agreements do increase every year, like the library, the SPCA, BC Transit. So I think that it's a very small amount and probably a reasonable way for us to kind of keep more on track with level taxation.
What I'd like to suggest is we get a motion, actually, before we bring it to committee of whole, that we turn this over to staff to look at and come prepared with something to the committee of the whole. So if someone would be prepared to make that motion, I think that's one way to go. Councillor Minions.
I would prefer we take it to committee of the whole. I think because we want to talk about ideas and then get staff to research those ideas. I think the point of committee of the whole is for us to be able to formulate the ideas through our discussion. So maybe there is some preparation staff could do for that, but I think it would be better if the ideas and direction, more specific direction, came from us.
Councillor Sobey.
Yeah, I do agree. But the thing is, we still haven't got a final report from staff about how the committee of the whole is going to be held and so forth. So I would rather, before putting the horse before the cart, or vice versa, I'd rather see that report coming in. So, yeah, I agree. It'll be a good idea. Thank you.
If I may interject for a moment, it'd be very important that the stakeholders like the chamber and stuff be actively involved in this. You guys are all great people, and hopefully you're all around for the next election, but it is something that I feel that if it is set up properly, and if it was set up 5 years ago, there'd be $1 million sitting in that account that we could have leveraged and done something like the Lower Johnson or other business districts. We have 5 business districts basically in this community, so there's a lot that could have been done with that.
Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like both suggestions. I like the idea of bringing it to the committee of the whole. I think we need to figure out, that's $200,000 out of the budget that is going to revenue, but it's coming out of something. So we need to figure out, the full implications of that. So I think it'd be great once we have an idea of what committee of the whole is going to look like and when it's going to happen. Then I don't see why this couldn't be the first agenda item on it. So.
Well, it could be. I'm just trying to jumpstart the process because I think there's a way of moving faster than going through the committee of the whole. And it is possible that we could do something in 2017 as opposed to waiting to 2018. So that's why I say I'm trying to jumpstart the process a little bit. However, if there is no appetite to make a motion, then we can move on. Councillor McClellan?
Mr. Mayor, I will move that we ask staff to give us implications of a 1% raise to the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? I'll second that, Mr. Mayor. Any further discussion on that?
Just, Mr. Mayor, it is a good idea for the other subject of the business licenses to come to the committee of the whole. If we get a committee of the whole, we haven't got one yet. So I think we should look at that, and it's not something I have to do immediately, the business licenses, because not coming due again right now, I don't think. So I think we're okay to just do the one thing.
Councillor Minions.
Can I just clarify on the motion what you're looking for, I guess, because it's $840. So you said what the implications are of it. Are you?
Just the 1% is going to go in your budget.
Okay.
So we do that Wednesday, next Wednesday.
It's on our list.
Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Councillor Paulson.
Just have a couple of questions based on your presentation. Tourism Tofino is a tenant in the office. Do we continue to pursue Euclid and Banfield to participate in even in a small way in that area, or are they covered under Tourism Tofino as well?
We haven't really explored that yet. It's not to say that we wouldn't or shouldn't, but for now, Tourism Tofino's the big player, and they've got a much bigger budget than anybody else, and we've had to dance with them to keep that up. It's every year it's going back to them and ensuring that we maintain that relationship. So Banfield would be a non-starter. They just don't have any funds whatsoever.
The other comment I have is on, you mentioned something about event planning and an event planner. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I know that Kamloops has had that in place for quite a number of years. And economically, that position has repaid Kamloops 1,000-fold. So it's an easy one to measure with results.
You're absolutely right. One of the things that we've heard from the hoteliers especially is that a lot of events are happening on the same weekend. And having an events coordinator, especially running out of maybe the chamber office or something, it's ideal because what happens is that we can maybe steer a committee or a group to say, listen, you know what? This is great that you want to do this. Unfortunately, this is going on. There are going to be no hotels or accommodations. What about moving it to a different weekend? These could be huge, economic wins for everyone.
My last quick question is a fun one. How's Triconic coming along?
Actually, it's coming very well. The plans are in place. Going to an event this weekend, a bike show in Vancouver. Again, we're marketing Port Alberni at that bike show, and we've done a good job of negotiating a rate on that, by the way. So got in at about a quarter of the price because I wouldn't say yes to the full price. So, but we have a very good presence in Vancouver this coming weekend. And really what we're doing is we're marketing Port Alberni as number one. That's what we're doing. And hopefully cyclists and swimmers will come along.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor, next delegation is Carol Schmidt from Omega Pacific Hatchery. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Council, for giving me some time tonight here to present some information. I should have brought a bunch of fish pictures, but I didn't. Maybe next time. I just wanted to give an update on there's great news and there's also challenges. And for those who aren't familiar with myself, I'm one of the owner-operators of Omega Pacific Hatchery. We're 9 miles by boat up Great Central Lake, across from the powerhouse. We built the hatchery in 1987. And 15 years ago, we decided to participate in the Salmon Enhancement Program. And so we, along with there's 300 other organizations that participate, the Chinook juvenile survivals to adults for enhancement releases were low and had continued to decline for 30 years at, I guess, 0.2 to 0.6%. And many of all our stocks are now listed as stocks of concern, with many extirpated. So we wrote the department and reviewed their information and said if they did some changes to freshwater that they could improve the marine survival back up to 5 to 10%. So after 7 years asking to participate in enhancement, and I by now had written a book entitled Freshwater Hatchery Management Practices, which could be incorporated to rebuild wild Chinook stocks. I was presenting at the Canadian Aquaculture Conference, and I ran into the head of the Pacific region, Paul Sprout, and I said, gee, you know, we've been trying to participate and demonstrate this in our hometown area, and we haven't been successful to participate from the staff. So he sent his assistant, and we later had a meeting with his South Coast staff, and Penny Cody, a regional director, attended with me. And that fall, that was in 2009, we brought in our first Chinook eggs for enhancement. Now, the Chinook population on Vancouver Island have 2 life stages. One is where they go out to the ocean right away, and the first May as the very small fish. Those are usually the ones that spawn in the lower reaches, whereas a lot of the other Chinook actually spend an additional year in freshwater before they migrate to the ocean. Our Chinook that we were growing would be the additional 1 year in freshwater. And Fisheries and Oceans had always said, well, we've tried it and it doesn't work. They didn't provide any more or greater results than their usual quicker, smaller fish that they released. So in 2009, we brought in the enhancement eggs for Phillips River, 50,000 eggs, 48,000 for Sarita, and 1,900 for the Nimint River. All were coated wire tagged. It was paid for by the Gillard Pass Fisheries Association, as well as Cermak, Marine Harvest, Creative Salmon, Grieg, and Huayet. And in 2013, a Fisheries and Oceans Stock Assessment reported substantial, significant high numbers of our Chinook. The preliminary marine survivals were reported at greater than 5%. And without even having the 5-year-old tag recoveries in the ocean. So we haven't got all the information, of course. That's going to be summarized here in March, but they could very well be at 7.5%, 8%. So these results that we demonstrated to the department have them revisit looking at growing yearlings for enhancement, and they started a trial. So the trial was to be over 4 years, and our facility in the final hour was going to be allowed to participate, and we would grow a comparative group to Robertson Creek. So 4 years, each hatchery growing 100,000 juveniles. The department said they would not assist with any of our costs to grow the fish for the trial, which is around $400,000 over 4 years. And just to, seeing Russell had a lot of numbers that he was throwing around, I thought I would throw some numbers on what the value can be generated from those 400,000 fish, which in fact, at 5% marine survival, if they were captured in recreational fishery, would be 20,000 fish, and the regional district has a report at $264 is the rod caught value or direct value, so that would be 5.2 million, and indirect that's 2.4 times. So it's $12 million in for our $400,000 that we would be investing in having to grow and tag and release these fish. So basically, let's see where we are. So anyways, we have now been growing the first group, which is going to be ready for release in April. And over the last 2 years, ourselves and West Coast Aquatic, we've applied probably no less than 12 applications to get funding from pots of money that are made for enhancement, but we have been unsuccessful. And the Area 23 Harvest Committee has provided us with money towards the project. However, our first group right now is scheduled for release in April 2017, and we still need to, they still need to be tagged, transported with lab costs and some feed, which is about $20,000. So I have one person in DFO that is working on it to see if he can find us some of the tagging costs, but it was recommended to us to set up an account on GoFundMe, so we just did that on Saturday. And so if you go under the business section, and it's we've entitled it Saving the Iconic King Salmon in Port Alberni, you can go there and we can see if we can raise some of the money to pay for this, this initial group, and then we have these other 3 groups that are coming up behind it. In consideration that we've been the only hatchery to have these high survivals, which is really significant. Everybody has said, well, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans should be paying for it, but this is where we are at this point in time, and hopefully, maybe going into this coming year, maybe we can convince them to cover some of the costs. The second part of what my presentation here tonight is that, so basically, our community and in support of First Nations, and I have letters from the late Bob Wright, from the Oak Bay Marine Group, and Jake Leonard from Alberni Valley Enhancement. They have totally supported our hatchery for the last, in writing letters to Fisheries and Oceans over the past 12 years. We have about 200,000 people now that are represented, about 20 letters. And the topic being for our hatchery to basically, since this information has come from our hatchery, and that we feel that in the future here that the department is shortly going to expand on rebuilding all the stocks, that our ask is for us to be a part of the rebuilding of the wild Chinook stocks, and to work collaboratively with DFO and to have fair support from them. And that's what my ask is today with the City Council, is to write a letter recommending that. And Washington, an auditor report that assessed 25 fish hatcheries, their recommendations was because the yearling or the S ones are so much more expensive to grow, that only those facilities that have demonstrated proof of high survivals should be hired to grow them, and whereas the other facilities can grow the lesser expensive quick fish. And in the trial that we've been involved here with, there has been unforeseen incidences and involving the egg loss and the juveniles having been terminated at the federal hatchery. So this trial right now is only continuing with our facility growing the yearling fish, and they'll be compared to the federal hatchery's standard S0. So they aren't growing any yearling fish at their facility. Those fish had to be terminated last September. So, and the significance of a 50,000 release group from our program will, after Alaska takes about 50% of the fish, deliver 1,500 fish back to a stream, whereas in the current S0 program, it's about 60 to 100 fish. So that's how significant that is. And I think this is the most important information to come across the federal government's desk in the past 25 years. And we have grown close to 300,000 of these yearling fish with actually no assistance from them. And the organizations that have helped pay for the costs was Gillard Pass Fisheries Association, Area 23 Harvest. The Ultimate Fishing Town paid for fish to be transported for a release, as did Marine Harvest, Cermak Grieg, Creative Salmon, and Hawaiiat. So anyways, that is my story today, and my ask is for a letter in support.
Okay, Carol, let me just ask you, is this in addition to the letters that we've already sent as a city?
Yes, we have a number of letters, we have 20 letters of support. And what I feel is, so all our information from all our releases is going to be, I'll be going to, hopefully to a meeting in March, and we'll be reviewing it. And we've proposed that to now let's get on with rebuilding the stocks and have us grow a percentage of fish, but we feel that they possibly may just want to run with it and do it at their own hatcheries again, but they haven't demonstrated that they can get the survivals.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClement?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Carol, for coming. And the first time I heard you say this, I said, oh. However, over the last several years with West Coast Aquatic and the Regional District Fisheries Committee, I've come to see what you're doing, and you even let me come out there and buy some of your honey from your hatchery one day. So, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to make a motion that we do write this letter, and if I get a seconder, I'll explain it a teeny bit, and then that'll be good enough. And really, sometimes the federal government listens when a few more people and municipalities and so on write. I haven't had a whole lot of experience, a whole lot of success, and a whole lot of time, so we got to try. I note what you're saying here. You use the polite term euthanize. That means they got killed, and the hatch was just wiped out. And every once in a while, I'll get a phone call to go and check X over here because this has happened and all these fish have died. And when you go and try and find out, you met with a wall of silence. So. Yes, thank you for coming, and thank you for the work you're trying, and I hope we do get the big salmon up. Thank you.
Councillor Paulson?
Just a quick question, Carol. You said that you've actually submitted a number of grant applications, and to this point in time you've been unsuccessful. Have they cited a reason why you haven't been successful, or are they kind of vague?
You know, for example, the Pacific Salmon Commission is a fund that's every August, and it's for, it can be for business and for not-for-profit organizations to benefit Alaska and BC fisheries. Washington's marine survivals are 0.2 to 0.5% as well. They're extremely low. Our project Alaska takes half of the fish that we release. They capture as adults. You would have thought that we would have qualified. There's been 4 applications sent to that, and we haven't. The latest comment that someone sent from the latest application for that was to the effect that we can't make an S1 out of an S0 stock. I think it's all these committees, it's public involvement program, or a registered contract facility with that, which we could qualify for some money. Like I said, the Pacific Salmon Commission has the Northern and Southern Fund. There's Pacific Salmon Foundation as well that holds 2 sessions a year for monies. Some will only accept not-for-profit. This trial is being done through West Coast Aquatic. We are under them, so West Coast Aquatic has applied, and I bet I added up, I think we've probably had 12 applications sent in. We should have qualified for some of them, but I think there is DFO staff sit on who determines eligibility. And when we signed the agreement to grow these fish, they wrote in the agreement that DFO will not provide any funding. And so whether that's the reason, we've recently asked them to remove those sentences, because right now this trial doesn't represent what the agreement was anyways, because we're now the only ones growing the yearling fish. And they said, well, we will change all the wording to represent the trial, but we won't take out those sentences, which doesn't make sense, so.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And council, then I'll call the question. All those on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. And Carol, I'll just leave you with some information. Some of us from council were able to meet with our MP Gord Johns earlier today, and he was able to share with us that the Minister of Fisheries, Mr. LeBlanc, is anticipated to come here to the Alberni Valley at some point this year.
Hopefully somebody will tell me when he's here.
Well, when we find out, we'll make sure you know. Okay, so
Excellent.
thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks a lot for your time, and we can bring back Port Alberni's terminal fishery to 100,000 Chinook in 4 years. We could have that right up there again, and that is a huge boost to this area.
Well, it would be a huge economic impact, so
Yeah.
let's hope we can get there.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, I know. First letter of support too.
Thank you. Okay, council, that brings us to unfinished business. From the McLean Mills Society, there were some questions of the city clerk about the appointment of directors, and at this point I'll turn this over to the CAO Ply to review that, the information in that report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you noted, this report from the city clerk is in response to questions from Roland Smith, a member of the public. And Mr. Smith's been doing a very good job in asking questions where he sees inconsistencies, especially around McLean Mill and McLean Mill Society. And as much as that has worked for staff, it is helpful to us refining our processes. So the report addresses the process which we use to appoint two new directors to the McLean Mill Society. And we've taken legal advice on this, and you'll note that the motions in the report are legalistic. I will say that the city staff will be working with McLean Mill Society Board of Directors to develop a clear and transparent process for the general meetings of the society. And the reason that the city needs to be involved in that is because the city is the only member of that society, and council represents the membership. So as you know, when council comes together, a quorum of council comes together, there are obligations that we have to meet in meetings for which there are a public notice period and which are accessible by the public and that sort of thing. So by extension, McLean Mill Society general meetings will need to meet the criteria the city has for council meetings. So in order to be, in this case, to be completely clear regarding the appointments of Melody Franker and Rebecca Palmer, which were endorsed by council at the last regular meeting, we would ask council now, sitting here as the member of the society, to endorse the resolution shown in your agenda, which will acknowledge that the city is the sole member of the society, that in this case, the notice period from the board for this general meeting be reduced, and that Melody Franker and Rebecca Palmer be appointed as directors of the society until the next AGM. So in essence, Mr. Mayor, if council proceeds with the motions in your report, you will be, for this short period of time, acting as a member of the society in a general meeting for which you will have waived the notice period.
Okay, thank you. So, Council, I'm proposing to break this into two parts. One is to receive the report, and the other one is to actually make the motion. So, I'm wondering, Councillor Paulson, if you could move receipt of that report?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And Councillor McClellan, I'm wondering if you can move the actual process.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And I think this is all one motion.
It is, yeah.
Okay. Whereas the city of Port Alberni is a sole member of McLean Mill Society, Pursuant to the laws of the Society, the following resolutions are passed as the resolutions of the member of a general meeting of the Society, that the member agrees to reduce the period of notice from the board for this general meeting, that the written resignations of Ken Fife and Jolene Dick be accepted, which have been received at the Society's registered office, and that Melody Franker and Rebecca Palmer be appointed as directors of the Society to hold office until the next annual general meeting of the Society or until successors are appointed.
Is there a seconder? Second, Mr. Mayor. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And council, that then allows us to move forward into Part F, their staff reports. First one is on accounts, so Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated February 27, 2017 be received in checks numbered 138116 to 138237 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $1,446,796.87 be approved.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And from the Director of Development Services, we have a development variance permit, something that we don't see too often. Council, do you have any questions on this permit? Maybe just for the benefit of public who may be watching, Mr. Smith, it might be worthwhile to just quickly review the situation.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. So the property at 5212 Pineo Road, it's actually 3 legal parcels, about 1 acre in size. There was an existing garage shop that was built in 2011 that was granted some variance by the Board of Variance for height and proximity to setbacks, so that was already granted. The property owners would like to do some additions to that building on each side of it, and have applied to vary the maximum accessory structure size in the city's zoning bylaw. So currently in the city's zoning bylaw under their zone, there's a maximum of just over 800 square feet of accessory structures that are allowed on someone's property. So the current garage is about 540 square feet. There is a garden shed also on the property, which it counts at about 240 square feet. And the proposed additions on each side of the building are essentially 12 feet wide by 27 feet in depth. So that's an additional almost 650 square feet. So the City's Advisory Planning Commission did consider this application and did provide its support. The variance that's being requested is essentially from a little over 800 square feet to 1,400 square feet. This is a significant variance, but this property is larger than most residential properties, in the city of Port Alberni. It's about 1 acre in size. Therefore, it's kind of not out of character given the size of the property that potentially a larger accessory structure should be permitted. This is something that has been a discussion at the staff level that we should potentially consider a future amendment that might come forward for council's consideration, that we should put a variable a square footage allowance. So if you have a very small piece of property, maybe your accessory structure shouldn't be as large, but if you have a larger property, that you might be allowed a larger accessory structure. That being said, the planning department is supportive of this proposed variance for this particular piece of property to allow a larger accessory structure on the property, and I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Any questions, Council? Councillor Alberni, do you want to make the motion?
That the report dated February 20th, 2017 from the Director of Development Services regarding proposed development variance permit number 90 be received and council proceed with consideration of the development variance permit.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. So then that brings us, Council, to the next part of this, which is input received from the public and applicant and comments by staff and council will form part of the record of input into the development variance permit application. We've just received the background information from the Director of Development Services. City Clerk, is there any correspondence on this?
None, Mr. Mayor.
And is the applicant here wishing to make a presentation? You're here, but you're not wishing to make? Is there any input from the public on this? Then, council, do you have any further questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
whereabouts is the driveway to get access to here? Does it just come off Pineal? I'm just
Yeah.
nosy on this question, by the way.
It's, if you could bring the aerial photo up, Davina?
That's what I'm looking at.
So it's essentially near where the address is, where that 5212
Yeah.
is. It comes in that way.
That was what I thought. I was
Yeah,
kind
and
of
then
looking,
comes around to where
looking
the
at all
house
this open
is.
space here.
Yeah.
To the handle.
I
Okay.
got no problem with them increasing that.
Okay, so then, Councillor
more.
Alemany, would you like to make that motion?
Yep, that development variance permit number 90 to permit an increase in the footprint of an existing accessory building at 5212 Pineal Road be authorized by City Council on February 27th, 2017.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And, Mr. Smith, we have from our Deputy City Clerk, Liquid Waste Management Plan Public Consultation Report. Do you need to go over that report for council? Just to help us out?
I'd be pleased to, but I guess essentially we're at the stage for the liquid waste management plan where we're now going out for public to provide information to the general public. We've been doing a significant amount of work with our First Nations, and our technical and various stakeholders throughout the community. Jake Martins and myself attended the Bulldogs game on Saturday to begin this wider public process, and as you announced at the beginning of the meeting, there will be a public open house on March, and this is essentially council endorsing that our consultation process that we're working on.
Perfect, thank you. I'm wondering, Councillor Minions, if you want to make a motion on the report.
That the report dated February 22nd, 2017 from the Deputy City Clerk Communications Coordinator be received and Council for the City of Port Alberni endorse the Liquid Waste Management Plan Consultation Plan as presented.
Is there a seconder? Seconder. All those in favor? Carried. And Mr. Smith, we have one more piece about water connections up outside of city limits.
So the city has received a request for a water connection to some property just outside city limits at the east end of Argyle Street. The city has considered this a couple times before, and essentially said yes, we would provide this at our normal cost if the property were to come into the city, be amalgamated into the city proper. This latest request is requesting that water service connection, but requesting that they not come into the city. I'd be pleased to try and answer questions for council.
Okay, so just let me just be absolutely crystal clear. What the proposal is that once they have this individual has made the request to come into the city, and that has actually been acted on, and that's actually happened, then we could look at providing a water service.
Well, that's what council has looked at previously.
Right.
This most recent request is asking for the water service without coming into the city.
And
But council can, council can give whatever direction you wish on this, of course.
I'm just being a little bit picky because we've been caught in this a couple of times as council where we haven't passed the motion that is exactly unequivocally what we want. And we end up heading somewhere or with a result something other than we'd intended. So in what I'm looking at here, it says that offering to provide one water connection for a payment of, subject to receiving a letter of request for a city boundary expansion application. And to me, that means that we could get the letter of request, provide the water, but never have that boundary expansion acted on. So we want to make sure as a council, I believe, that it be acted on before we provide the water, because it's our opinion as a council that if you want City of Port Alberni services, you should be part of the City of Port Alberni. Or council could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the intent of council.
Well, that's clear at council's discretion about what your intent is. If you want to be crystal clear about if you only want to provide the water service if the property is amalgamated into the city, then that would be a slight revision to the recommendation.
So I'm suggesting that we make a slight revision just so that it's crystal clear and can't be anything other than what we intended.
Well, and that's what council's, you can give that direction. I guess the request is not to do that. But if council wants to do that and make a water service subject to it being in the city, then you'd want to make that direction, yes.
Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make that slight revision so that it would be dependent on them being a part of the city, if that's clear. So I'll make that motion.
Okay, we're talking to our city planner here. So what exactly would the revision be?
The revision would be, the motion would be as it stands, except it would be on receipt of approval of them being in the city.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
I think it means that subject to amalgamation of the property within the city's boundaries.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good wordsmithing.
Yeah. So that would mean when it's legally gone through the process and now is within the city boundaries. Yeah.
Once they join the city, I don't know what they want.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Sobe, did you have a?
Yeah, just a simple question. I take it they're on septic?
Well, there's no sanitary sewer or water service to that, so
Okay, and all they're wanting is just a water line?
that's what the request is a water service connection.
Thank you, and they'd be paying at water rates of the city?
Well, no. Well, we'd have to work out I mean, right now, they're not within the city boundaries.
Okay.
The request is for a connection. We would have to, if council was to give that connection, and if they stayed out of the city, we'd have to have some sort of billing for consumption on that, but it would be a bit tricky if they're not within the city.
And I believe what we're saying is you become part of the city and you will get your water connection, including which would then presumably be the same water rates that everybody else in the city would pay.
That's the motion on the floor. And if they became within the city boundaries, potential other city services besides water could be extended, including sanitary sewer as
Exactly.
an option.
So you're part of the city. So on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Cameron, you had a question.
I just wanted to clarify, sir, I think there's a misunderstanding. It wasn't that she didn't want her property in the city, the lot that wants the water. There's additional property in behind that the city wanted to be taken in as well. So it's the property, the lots 5 and 6 on which Mrs. Stevenson lives, she's willing to put that into the city.
Right.
To obtain water, but the property in behind that is also in the regional, we'd like to keep that in the regional development because it's just not feasible for us to develop a small amount of property there to city standards.
Yeah, I think we understand is to expand the city boundaries to include essentially her residence, but not the rest of the property. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, I think we've got it.
I thought that was,
I just wanted to make sure that we had the motion exactly right. So I think we've got it. Okay, council. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on, council, we are looking at a status report. Are there questions, council, of this of the status report? Councillor Paulson?
And I don't know if you can answer it, bring it back later, but number 32, that's the barrier between moving traffic and pedestrian area. Can you tell me if there's been some movement forward on that? And I'm quite excited to have something done before July the 1st, because we're going to have thousands of people down there.
Yeah, and there's been nothing that I'm aware of that's been planned on that, but I'll check with the manager of operations and come back to council with that.
Perfect.
Okay, Councillor McClement?
Yeah, on that one, I'm kind of walk down there on occasion, and right now there's nothing. We've talked a lot about putting those concrete barriers like we put all around the town on different things. I'd like you, if possible, could you consider a more of a fence type area, a little bit higher, because you're right on the road there as you're walking. That's all, just on that one. And I was just a question on number 3. I notice all the ones up here almost for the CAO are under low, and I was just wondering if number 3 we're still on to, or is that something we've changed our mind on? I thought we'd changed our mind on that, but am I wrong?
Mr. Mayor, number 3 is to do, it's from the Rogers report, and it references expanding the role of the fire chief to include responsibility for not only fire, but emergency services, including RCMP and bylaw enforcement. As the council knows, we have a new fire chief recently new in his position, and there's also a budget item for a manager in the RCMP detachment. So at this point in time, I think that is what we need to have in place first, as a manager at the RCMP detachment. This may be developing the fire chief into a director of protective services position, may be a future step for us, but I don't see that in our immediate future.
So are you suggesting removing that once we've finished the budget? Is that what you're suggesting?
If council approves a manager in the RCMP attachment, it would be prudent to remove this and bring it back at a later time if we desire to do so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the other question I had, and I don't know if it makes any difference or not, number 4, organizational structure for shared service of the ACRD, it's on the low. I was just wondering if it's on low, is that going to slow it down? Or we had already talked about as soon as the budget's over, council getting together and making some plans and then approaching the regional district. Is that still where we're at?
That's still where we're at as far as council to board discussions, but I see pursuing shared services to be an ongoing, it says it's in progress, it's ongoing at the staff level all the time, regardless of whether council and the board are meeting. If council desires to make that a higher priority, then that would certainly indicate that it's a higher priority of the city. I don't know that it would change the level of effort that myself and Mr. Dyson have been giving it, because we talk on this on a regular basis. But it wouldn't be a bad idea if council wanted to raise the priority of that item.
Okay, I think it's a good idea, but make the motion another meeting, Mr. Mayor. We're getting on.
Okay. Councillor Sobey, did you have a question?
Just to figure out if we need a motion to remove item number 3 from the status report.
I think it was explained that we'd wait till budget was finished before we do that.
Okay.
But Councillor Sobey, do you want to move receipt of the report, or the status report?
I'll move to receipt.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 19, the truck route. If memory serves me correctly, did we purchase some property on the Catalyst side of that truck route already? Do we own something there already?
Mr. Mayor, we did make a purchase at the same time as we purchased the sewage lagoons. We purchased some land, rail and road between Catalyst and the Roundhouse, I believe. So that was envisioned as a phase 2 or 3 of the truck route from Redford to Johnson. Wasn't envisioned as the first step. It was envisioned as a later step.
Okay, so we're still pending that discussion with Western Forest Products then?
That discussion is ongoing.
And when we get our new city engineer, then we'll be able to focus more closely on that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we accept the current status report as received.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Second, Mr. Mayor. All those in favor? Carried. And council, this is now a good time for us to have a recess. And so we'll come back at 8:45. Okay, Council, we're back from our recess. Now brings us to our next report, which is the report for economic development. As usual, Mr. Deacon, you've had a very busy month.
Mr. Mayor, it's, I think the last time I reported out to council was in 2016. And so it's been a very busy time. The Johnson Road charrette, Scott and I are in possession of the report that summarizes the recommendations and puts a ballpark estimate on costs. And while I was waiting for my turn up here, I quickly counted. I think there are 59 recommendations, and if one assumes that the cost of each is going to be to the upper level of the range that they provided, then we're looking at more than $5 million in recommendations. So Scott and I hope, intend, will bring council back a report for the, I think it's March 8th is the next council meeting, and we will have the recommendations laid out with our pick for what should move ahead in this fiscal year and what might be a plan to move ahead with the others in the remaining 5-year plans. So that's with respect to the Johnson Road charrette. The Export Navigator pilot program, the province is really excited about this initiative, and Port Alberni is one of the pilot communities, thanks primarily to Community Futures, who put the money into the program to make sure that we would have a coordinator. And this individual has been working with a number of businesses that I've alerted him to within the community that I believe are export ready, and we're getting, I think, a bit more generous with our interpretation of who is and is not export ready, because Daryl Gertson, who's the individual working with the program, is definitely prepared to give them a bit more assistance to get a leg up and running. So if any of you know a business that you think should be in this program, and by export, we mean sell their products beyond the Alberni Valley. So it could be the rest of Vancouver Island, it could be British Columbia, North America, overseas, but beyond the Alberni Valley. So if you know of a program, or if anybody who's listening or watching knows of a program, please get in touch with myself or Lori Kamiri at the Community Futures and let us know who that company is, if it's your company, and we'll make sure that Daryl gets in touch.
Would that be applicable to someone who maybe isn't even sure if they would be eligible, but want to find out more?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
An example of business that is export ready actually came up at the Islands Agriculture Show, and Jan Lavertu, who's just left the room, and some of you may have seen it, he and his son Jordan have prepared a whole series of board games. They've now got 11 board games and they're actually pieces of art. They've designed them so you can hang them up on the wall. They're so attractive, and the playing pieces are in a bag behind the board, and they're ready to go. So I've connected Jan with Daryl for the program, but there are many others in the community, including some who are already exporting but are looking to take a step further. An example is Tonewood, the company that's manufacturing guitar blanks here. They're shipping all over the world. Small company that has a huge market share in guitar blanks, and they want to take their business to the next step. So, and it ranges. So, speaking of the Islands Agriculture Show, and it seems like a year ago, literally, I'd like to thank the ACRD staff and the Agriculture Development Committee for their assistance with the show. Would also, and I think I mentioned this at a budget meeting, that some of the people attending the shows were disappointed to see the snow come, but were very impressed with the work that the Public Works crew and the Parks crew did at cleaning the way, plowing the road to the venue, and cleaning the strip in between Glenwood Center and the two venues where the educational sessions were taking place. So I would like to thank all of those for that. I do also want to take this opportunity, and it's not on the report, but to congratulate Peter Miras of Rendezvous Dive Charters, who was awarded the Conservation Volunteer of the Year for 2016 at a February 21st event at the Vancouver Aquarium by the Coast and Ocean Research Institute. Peter's work, and it was for the derelict gear removal program that he's got going in Barkley Sound. Peter is also a phenomenal videographer. He's won awards for it, and his videos are the ones that are on display at the Alberni Aquarium. Also like to make note of the fact that Port Alberni is in the running for Canada's most rider-friendly community. Currently, we're being bested by Medicine Hat in the online voting. And I talked to David Wiwichar from the Toy Run about this. They're not particularly worried at the moment about it. But if there are those of you who are not voting on a daily basis, I'd still encourage you to Google Canada's most rider-friendly community and go on and vote for Port Alberni. Finally, just a couple of quick statistics. Because we had a conversation about business licenses, in January, 283 business licenses were renewed, and 11 new businesses were taken out. And in addition to that, we had 30 inquiries about individuals wanting to start a business license, and our economic development assistant invested about 14 and a half hours in those inquiries. In February, there were 38 licenses renewed, 9 new ones taken out. There were 15 more inquiries with about 10 hours invested in those. And also, I did want to acknowledge Melissa for her work on the Islands Ag Show. We counted up her hours, 132.5, which is a little more than 3 weeks in total spent preparing for the show and then actually being at the show in to provide assistance. That's my report.
What's the current cost of a business license?
The average is about $200.
Okay. That's then $60,000 we're talking about.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Council, questions? Then, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of this report?
I'd like to move that the monthly report from the Economic Development Manager providing information about current department operations be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deacon. Council, there are no bylaws, so that brings us to Part H, correspondence for action. And the first correspondence is from Ellen Iwanishin and Beverly Ness, who have a company called Goats on the Hoof Vegetation Management. And we have a letter dated the 10th of February requesting that council allow them to provide their services within the city. And I'm wondering, Councillor Washington, will you be prepared to make this motion, have this unique business operating?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. That the letter dated February 10th, 2017, requesting council to allow Goats on the Hoof Vegetation Management to provide their services within the city be received and referred to staff for review.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I think it's a unique idea. I've often figured I needed a goat in my backyard. You know, it saves me having to cut the lawn, but it might eat my wife's garden too, so that'd be the end of that program. But I think it's a good idea, seriously. I think it's something that its time may have come. They talk here about enclosing the electric fence and so on, and it's a temporary thing. Someone in towns needs some property cleared, go for it.
Councillor Alamani?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that I think I've seen this this group, or maybe it was another one, in Nanaimo at Woodgrove the past couple of years. They were there taking care of some blackberries and bushes and stuff there. Broom. Which is awful, terrible stuff I'm allergic to. But it does an amazing job.
And council, from personal experience, we've had goats on my property, and they do a marvelous job of clearing everything, including ivy. But you can't let them at your holly because holly is very toxic to goats, and they die a horrible death. So we do have to be careful about some of the things that they eat, and unlike the cartoons, they don't eat tin cans. So it's a unique opportunity for us. So on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then that brings us to informational correspondence. City Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities AGM and convention is taking place in Campbell River, April 7th to 9th. We'd ask that council confirm their attendance with the Deputy City Clerk as soon as possible. Ron Lapine has sent an email, or a copy of an email to Island Timberlands expressing concern regarding the limited access to Mount Arrowsmith for recreational users. Gary Lajeunesse expresses concern regarding the perception of Port Alberni. RCMP expenditures to January 31st, 2017. A letter from the Minister of State for Emergency Preparedness responding to the Mayor's letter of November 24th regarding consideration of facilitating coastal communities in developing solutions to earthquake and tsunami risks. Eric Hockaday expresses concern regarding snow removal on city streets. The Ombudsperson has provided the outcome of an investigation into a complaint. And lastly, an email from Inclusion BC advising of the first Disability Pride Celebration and Parade in BC as part of Canada 150, taking place on June 15th. and requesting funding from every municipality in the province to provide grants to individuals, families, and organizations to participate in their own Disability Pride celebrations.
Would somebody like to, sorry, Council, do you have any, anything you wish to draw out of this correspondence? Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk, I guess, a little bit about Ron Lepine's letter. I was going to talk about this in my report, but I was up at the protest on the hump there yesterday, which turned out to be much larger than anticipated. There were at least 200 people there. There were 100 cars on the side of the highway, so you can figure it out from that. But it's a really serious issue. I've gotten a lot of correspondence on it since then, just in the past day. People getting locked in behind gates, both in the Mount Arrowsmith area and in the Ash River Valley area. People not being able to get up to Strathcona Park or up to Labor Day Lake. So it's a big issue. So I'm not sure what we can do. I don't think we can do a whole lot as a city, but I think it's something that we have to look at because we have a lot of businesses that rely on it now. ATV businesses, outdoors, fishing. So I think we'll be hearing a lot about it.
Yeah, I've received some correspondence on it as well, particularly over the last 3 weeks. And so what I have urged Island Timber to do is to approach the ACRD because that is their jurisdiction and see what can be done in terms of making them more aware of what the concerns are of the community. And let me tell you, the concerns that I receive are probably very similar to what all of us are receiving, which is people are not only concerned about access, but they're also concerned about the frustration that they see in the community and in our neighboring communities, and wish to have something positive done about it to essentially return to the way, as much as possible, to the way things used to be, so that we had free access to our surrounding forests, obviously with the exception of areas of active logging. So we'll have to see how we can get to that and what the province can do in order to live up to its obligations. But having said that, City Council, I don't believe this is the place to bring those concerns. The regional district is the place we can support, but it isn't our territory as it stands. Anything else, Council? Then, Councillor McClellan, do you want to move receipt? Please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move the receipt of information correspondence number 1 through, I believe it's 8, pardon me. Number 1 through 8.
Seconder?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, just report out from in camera. This is for public information. Now, the city recently listed 2 properties for sale on 9th Avenue through its realtor and at an in-camera meeting on February 14th, 2017, accepted offers for each lot at slightly over asking price. In keeping with community charter legislation, the city has advertised its intent to dispose of the properties at 4453 and 4465 9th Avenue to Karen Poirier for $61,000 and $61,500 for each lot. The closing date for the sale is March 10th. And now, Council, this brings us to Council reports. First report is mine. Along with other councillors, I attended a museum event where an Arthur Lismer and an Emily Carr piece were shown for council and the community's benefit. This combines with other significant art that the city has as part of its museum collection. And also, I attended an event in Vancouver on behalf of the city. It was a Ducks Unlimited dinner, and it was interesting. Even though the event was in Vancouver, at the Vancouver Club, there was significant awareness and interest in Port Alberni and what Ducks Unlimited could do to continue to help us and to further their presence and impact in our community. Last week, Council, I was at the Mayor's Caucus in Oak Bay from February 22nd to 24th and took the opportunity for a couple of meetings related to the transshipment hub. And for Council's information, I know there's an article there about AVICC. I'll be up on Friday, but on Saturday I have a commitment to the Top 20 Under 40 event, which occurs in Nanaimo on the Saturday, and I'm one of the judges for that event. So I will be at AVICC, but only on the Friday, unfortunately. And that's my report. I move receipt of my report. Second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we're on to the regional district report. And Council, for your information, because I was at the Mayor's Caucus, I was unable to attend the ACRD meeting, but was ably represented by Councillor Minions. So, Councillor McClement, I turn this over to you for the regional district report. Well, I could ask Councillor Minions, but that wouldn't be fair.
What I'll do, Mr. Mayor, is read the report that I've written out, and if Councillor Minions wishes to add, she may.
Okay.
Okay, we had actually two meetings. There was the AV Committee, Alberni Valley Committee, and at that time we elected John McNabb to be the chair of the Alberni Valley Committee. And there was some reported new funding for ICE-T, and it was sort of just was passed over at our meeting. It was mentioned it's coming, and I said, yippee. And there seemed to be no further debates. I guess you're going to be giving us a lot to report on that, Mr. Mayor, as you are on that board.
Yeah, $10 million.
Yeah, that's what I say. We'll take it. We had a debate, re the access to forest lands, and the staff are going to check on the status of a contract or an agreement. I'm not sure just how that worked out because so long ago, signed between McMillan Bladell and ACRD to allow citizens of the RCD access to the forest lands, and see if that can be, if that's still in effect and if we can make that work. There was and I guess, there was a lot of debate on that, and there always is on that subject, but we do always have to remember one thing, whether we like it or not, it's private land. And we don't like people necessarily coming, to our private land, and we got to make a deal with them, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. About 18 some odd, it got bought by somebody and passed on to H.R. McMillan. So the one that's around here, there's others that up and the other way was CPR. It's private all along. It was never public, and since they gave it to the railroad. Another story, not going to get into that argument. Anyway, we had a debate on the landfill, and we noted that if we need to draw down the methane, the bill will be $13 million. We heard a report on that from the CAO, Russell Dyson, and as you heard, I've asked you to get a copy of that to everybody. The city and commercial users deposit the most food scraps and yard waste. There's no real knowledge of how much city deposits. It is lumped in with all the valley. Numbers given, I think, are a bit askew because it's kind of a guess when I ask them. And the regional directors were saying that most of their residents use composting on their own land, and I think that's probably quite true. And the cost of the city of kitchen and yard waste was listed at $71,000 per annum. It was more than likely closer to 90, as the total for the whole valley was 114. So that was just a guess, and it's something we're going to have to figure out, and there's a debate that we as council are going to have. And the report out from in camera was Russell Dyson's retirement. We decided to look for a replacement on our own, but we did put a maximum budget line of $40,000 in case we do need later on a headhunter. We don't have to go back to the well. And we also voted to create a short-term position to assist with dealings with landfill and the airport and et cetera. And the concept was that would be a QP, so we'll see where that goes. And I moved that part of that report and accept it if Councillor Minions wants to add.
The only thing that I'll add is, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but for the land access and island timberlands issue, we did invite them to come to a regional district meeting and present or review their public policy with us, so for public use of their lands.
Do you know second is?
I'll second it.
All in favor of receipt? Carried, thank you. And then this brings us to councillors' reports. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. February 15th, of course, a budget meeting. On the 17th, we attended the Port Players presentation of The Foreigner, which is an excellent production. I've had a few of the IHS members come in to visit me. They're concerned about the future of the collection, but all pointed out that most of that collection is city-owned, so just something to think about. And thanks to the Port Authority and, of course, Tim at the city for printing off my blueprints of Tai Landing. I've got almost life-size drawings now, so that I can plot a festival for this year coming up Labor Day weekend. February 25th, coldest night of the year. Did the 5K like most. Thanks to Councillor Minions for our captain, and I'm sure she'll have more to report later. And had the audit committee meeting this afternoon, and that's my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Short, like Councillor Washington, I was at the coldest night of the year. Nice. We all got great hats. And I'd just like to point out that I did hear that Nanaimo only raised $22,000 or so, and we raised $33,000 or so for the community. So that's pretty awesome. And I attended to the protest up at the top of the hump on Sunday. We had the town hall meeting with the budget last 2 weeks ago, Wednesday. I thought it was really good. Had some really good participation online, and I hope that we can do that some more in the future, because it was a great process. And then we did the audit committee meeting just this afternoon. That's it.
Thank you. And Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a Civic Affairs Committee meeting. The Civic Affairs is, for anyone who doesn't know, is a committee of the Chamber. And we spent most of the time talking about putting together the new growth committee that we are working to form. Most of the focus of the discussion was around how to structure to reach out to involve some new people, hopefully, in the committee than we see at most of our committees. Those of us who are on a lot of committees will probably realize that we see the same people over and over. So we're trying to think of new ways to reach out and maybe get some people that we don't necessarily always hear their opinions from. We're going to definitely get those people as well. Our standard committee people, which is a very good thing, but we want to start reaching some of the other people in the community. I had a Chamber of Commerce Board meeting. Of course, I attended the ACRD meeting. Rainbow Gardens meeting. There was a lot of focus on the planning of the expansion. There's some important dates coming up there, and we're going to be doing a strategic planning session around it as well, and some more public engagement. Budget meetings. It was great to go to the museum event. We're really lucky to have those new art pieces featured here locally, so I'm excited about that. Today we had a meeting with Gord Johns, our MP, and he gave us some important information around ministers coming to town and different meetings that we'll want to be a part of. And then, of course, the biggest thing was the Coldest Night of the Year event put on by Alberni Community and Women's Services. The original goal for fundraising was $25,000, and $33,000 ended up being raised. So really, really good for the first year of the event locally. And I want to really thank everyone who participated for sure, but certainly Council for being there, everybody but Councillor Sauvé, but we appreciate the money he donated, so didn't have to be there. And city managers had a team. It was great to see management there. The fire department had a team, did a great fundraising effort. The police department had a team. So just really strong support by the city, which was fantastic to see, especially for such a worthwhile cause. And I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council, just to follow up, I have a package that'll go into your mailboxes tomorrow from MP Gord Johns. Councillor Paulson.
Short report as well. We had another Canada 150 organizational meeting last week, and that's starting to come together. We've actually formed subcommittees, and the organization of that event is actually coming along. Once again, reiterate, we're in budget process, but there will be a celebration fund where groups can apply for granting, maybe to offset sound systems or to bring an entertainer in. But I also encourage anybody in the community that is an entertainer, an artisan, or anybody that wants to be involved in the event, please get in touch with myself or Teresa Kingston. Participated in the coldest night fundraiser, and it was cold. It certainly was. Thanks for the block heater, and thanks for dragging me out for a little stroll on a nice evening. And last night I attended the Bulldogs Player Awards, and it's kind of sad to bid fond farewell to some of the boys that are graduating out, but they're moving on to college and bigger things, so proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Sauvé?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was present at the exhibit opening at the museum on the 15th, which it's always a pleasure to attend a museum and seeing the new exhibits accepted. Attended the budget meeting, of course, on the same day, on the 15th. On the 24th, I attended the committee, the Alberni Valley Community Stakeholders Initiative to end homelessness within our community, and it was a very informative meeting. We elected a new vice chair, which Patty Edwards took responsibility for, so it's nice to see her within that committee. The big message is that, we're trying to work with BC Housing and trying to attempt to get affordable housing within our community. I know there's going to be a housing forum on May 17th at the Barclay Hotel. It's between 10 and 3, and they're just in the process how people to be registered, so just look into the newspaper, the media, and you'll be able to find out. Again, I learned several steps of BC Housing. There's single parent with children, adults, and the biggest concern, and everybody's been affected with, is the recent hydro bills, and it's affecting a lot of the seniors. So we'll be asking those important questions when we deal with BC Housing. Again, today we had the audit committee meeting. A few items came up, which we're going to let staff answer. And I apologize for not attending the coldest night of the year, but yes, I did donate money. But I was very busy with volunteering with my seniors, and they trump. So thank you very much. That's my report.
That might not necessarily be a great choice of words, but let's move on. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, you can trump somewhere else. Yeah. Thank you very much. I was at the coldest night. I didn't walk very far, but I had a few other things I had to attend. I did not make the MP's meeting today. I must have missed a notice, I guess, but I had another meeting with the McLean Mill Society, and that's coming along well. I'll be getting a good report from them, I hope, on Wednesday. They've had a lot of bumps in the road getting started, but it looks like it is coming now. Let's hope that things can be made good. And there's just one other comment I'd like to make, because I think everyone's mentioned budgets and so on, is this May we're having a provincial election. And we always want something from our provincial politicians. And there's 2 or 3 parties running in town, and I think we should get each and every candidate with tell them what we want and ask them what they're going to do for us. Don't stick to the one you like the best. You don't know who's going to win. The one in, we want to be on our side. And I'll move the acceptance of all these wonderful reports, Mr. Mayor, sir.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, this then brings us to new business, essentially outreach to property owners. One of the concerns that we have had for the entire life of this council and councils before us is that some of our properties, particularly in Southport, but not exclusively so, are frankly in terrible shape. And when I say properties, not just businesses, but not just buildings, but also empty properties. And it causes great concern for council, and it causes great concern for members of the public. And of course, it sends a message to people in the city and beyond the city about how we view ourselves and the importance of our properties. Some of our properties, we'll notice, and we've talked about them, are in such terrible shape that they're actually health concerns, fire concerns, public safety concerns. So what I'm asking council is, let's consider a program where we actually actively reach out to the owners of these properties and send them a formal notice from the city. Can be under my signature quite easily. Many letters from the city are, where we express our concerns and let them know what some of the options are and what some of the processes that the city can consider entering into in order to get them to address issues with their property. So I'd like to open it up for council kind of discussion, and then by the end of it, I'm hoping to get a sense from you about how aggressive you want those letters to be. What tone do you want in the letters to take? I do want to hear it. I want to know, because this is a concern for everybody, and it's certainly a concern for
Mr.
lots
Mayor,
of people in
do
the
you want
community.
that discussion right now?
If possible, like
Like a mini town hall meeting, eh?
almost like that, yes. But it is a real, a mini committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole, that's the word.
Councillor Alemany and then Councillor Sauvé.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just clarifying, this would be just business property or commercial property owners.
It's commercial properties that I think we really want to focus on right now, not private residences at this point.
As far as tone of the letter, I think if we're going wide, I always tend to try to be on the nice side first, and then if nothing happens, then you follow up. But you gotta go with the carrot first.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sauvé?
Didn't raise my hand, but I'll put in my input.
I've never knew not to have an
No.
opinion on something like this.
No, it's just when it comes, I don't want to be starting to send harsh letters and all that, and who is to tell what the business can do and what can they afford, but a courtesy letter reminding them of several options available to them. I'm all for that. Otherwise, I would just rather stick with the guidelines of the bylaws and stick with that. Thank you.
And we can direct people towards the owners towards the facade improvement program 2017, which is a good positive incentive, and it's created lots of opportunities for some people from last year. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I would agree that the first letter this time sent to the businesses that have active business in it be, decent, offering them that. But I think that the letter to the empty buildings, and some of them that are decrepit, as you've been mentioning, should be a bit more pointed as things that need to be done. We do have some penalties that we're able to put on for vacant buildings and so on. I think we should increase those, but that's probably a budgetary or similar debate. But I'm not feeling a whole lot towards people who live wherever they live and not in the valley, and they own these properties. They're letting it go to rack and ruin and don't intend to do anything to them. And I've been very plain about that. And so I think we're going to have to do something that brings them around. And if we have to do something and put it on the tax bill, I guess we have to. But it's something we got to be cautious of, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
I agree. I think the first step that we need to do is, for most of the businesses, sell what we have or the programs that we have and take that selling point of view. And I just want to concur with Councillor McClellan that there's a number of absentee landlords or absentee owners that really, I don't know why they're sitting on the property, but they are, and they really don't care about what the property is like. And I worked in a building on 3rd Avenue, and there was a gentleman in Victoria that owned the building. We needed roof repair, and he just said, "You're on your own. Not going to put a penny into the building." But that's kind of what we're up against, and I don't know what kind of teeth we may have as a council to get through that frontage, but if there's a way that we can do it to encourage people to move forward, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. I think it's always a good idea for us to inform, if we have concerns, make sure we're informing the building owners of what our concerns are, what our rights are, and what the programs available are. You never know if just hearing about facade improvement program could spur them to address the problems on their own. That said, I feel a little bit hesitant about encouraging the really bad building owners to take advantage of the facade improvement program when we will have limited funds. So I know that there's specific buildings we want to address, and this is one step to get there. But I also want to make sure that we leave enough access to the funds for the businesses in our community who are keeping themselves up and have more work to do. And then my other concern is about our ability to actually implement whatever we put in a letter. So I definitely have a concern around how much capacity we have in our bylaw enforcement department. I think that's something we should certainly be talking about more this year at budget. If we do want to make this a priority, and I think that we should, then we need to make sure we have the ability to enforce what we say we're going to enforce.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree. Councillor Sauvé.
Just to add, I just want to make sure, because I'm talking about the cordial letter for facade improvement and all that. That's all great and done. But I would have a different letter for those who are abandoned and leave those store vacants. And we're still having mold issue in certain businesses and all that. That I would like to see more enforcement into taking care of those absentee lawyers, even in a legal matter.
So there actually, we do have some properties where the building has burned, taken down for whatever reason, and what's left there is a public safety concern, so we need to address some of those. Okay, Council, you've given some really good feedback. Thank you very much. What I'll do is I will send to you a draft of a letter once it's ready, and you can have a look at it before we actually send it out. Okay, this brings us to question period. It's an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of Mayor and Council. Mr. Anderson.
I'm glad to hear, Neil Anderson, Carmichael Crescent, I'm glad to hear that you're looking at doing something about these buildings. It's long past due, so thank you. I was updating myself on the information on the McLean Mill Society and Roland Smiths, and while I was doing that, I also got into a site where we were talking about the Sprott business plan, and I ran into this. It came up in January, and the plan, from what I understand, is a creative way of utilizing the empty retail spaces, which somewhat falls in line with what you were just talking about. Yeah. And Kevin Wright and Pat Deacon, the Economic Development Manager, apparently have identified empty storefronts and are looking at options and how we can fill them and etc. Mr. Wright and Mr. Deacon also presented, I understand, to Council in December an interim report to City Council, and I'm surprised at the figures that was in here. Thank you for your patience, but there is questions.
Okay.
20% of the commercial spaces that we have are empty, and if I'm reading this right, only 10 of the 98 commercial spaces are marketed. And it again raises the question that was brought up here is why. So there's so much things that here has to be looked at. So my first question is, can someone tell me what is happening with the Sprott program? From what I know of it, I think it's a very good program. It has a lot of potential, but there's a lot more about it that I need to myself that I would like to find out. So what is happening with it?
Well, I know that with the Sprout program, there have been some discussions between Mr. Deacon and Mr. Wright, and he's kind of moved into an initiative through Community Futures to fairly actively work at providing some financing for some of these initiatives. So it is proceeding. It's just they're not quite at a point yet where they're ready to announce something to the public. But behind the scenes, there is some considerable work going on. And again, it's in partnership with Community Futures for the most part.
Is council in general in support of this program?
Council's in support of it. We've endorsed the program, but we're waiting to see the results of the negotiations and the efforts between those three parties.
Is there other funding that's available?
I'm not sure that I'm able to answer that question. I'm not sure. Through Community Futures, certainly there is other funding, and that's not city money. And then, of course,
funding I'm applying to. Is there government funding for initiatives such as this?
There are some government initiatives, both in terms of the marketing and the assembling the data, helping with business plans and so on. So, and that's important and can be quite costly if an individual business has to do it on their own. So there are some great programs.
Have we applied for any of those programs?
We are in the process of applying, but it's also directing individual businesses where to go for some of that financial support as well.
Have we had meetings with I would imagine one of the first stages of delving into a program like this is meeting with the owners and the concerned parties. Have we done that?
I can't answer that question because I don't know the exact status of that right now, but I believe it's, that is in process. Sorry, Councillor Minions has something that she can add.
I just wanted to comment that I know some of the challenge has been actually finding accurate contact information for the property owners. So they'll have either no contact information and, some of them have gone to pulling title searches and not being able to find that accurate information for that person. Some of them have numbers on the doors that are disconnected, so it's not necessarily easy for someone to just find the information and contact them.
Right, so, and I can understand that being a problem, but since there should be a record of where these people are.
Well, actually, one of the issues is sometimes there's a lease to own or rent to own situation, and then it kind of falls through, and legally you're not really sure where you stand, and trying to track down the exact owner can be really problematic, even for the city. So it is an issue that we're working on with a number of our buildings. Councillor Sauvé?
Yeah, I just want to add to Mr. Anderson's comment to the fact that some of them are also landlords that we know who they are, but they're not corresponding back. They don't want to, like Councillor Paulson said, they don't want to put an extra penny into their efforts, and those are the crutches, a minor percentage of the crutches we're having into implementing such a Sprout program, is to get the buy-in from the owners. We could throw in as much money as we want, but when it comes to private property, unless you get the buy-in from the owners that want to join that program, it's not going to go anywhere. And one of the crutches is simple, that we can't get a hold of the owners, or second of all, they just don't want to participate and they just leave it there. That's why we need to do serious enforcement with our bylaws.
And you talked about that, council talked about that a few minutes ago. The only word that was missing was the obligations of the owners.
Exactly.
They also have an obligation to the city and to the public when they purchase and they have a place. And not being having expertise in this field, but common sense tells me that the city has probably a lot more power to deal with this than we maybe think we do.
Yep.
And I've mentioned in the past that Nashville, Tennessee, the city comes and does the work and they build them.
Yeah, but it's still a legal process that we have to
No,
respect.
I understand that,
So-
but it's a long process. It's not, there's no short-term solution, but I think it's long past time we have to start working on this, and that's why I'm so glad to hear that we're starting on the commercial buildings as far as their appearance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.